Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of Rock and Roll What Ifs. I am Corey Knowles, editor-in-chief of Armchair Rockstar.com, and today we're going to talk about Guns N' Roses and what if they had never parted ways in like 93, 94. There's a lot of wishy-washiness around the win of that. Also, like to welcome Aaron Vaughn, one of our regular featured contributors and good friends. Hey, Aaron.
What's up, guys?
And welcome again to Mr. Chris Miletus, who works with us regularly as well and is also a longtime friend of the show.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Before we get started, please take a moment to like, subscribe, ring the bell. Also, this is the first episode that you will be able to get shortly after it comes out on Spotify and Apple Music. We've finally taken the podcast over there. So, everywhere on social media. There are others we will be looking at. We're going to try to get it on Audible, iHeartRadio, some things like that in the short term. But in the meantime, those are the two biggies. So let's get rolling. I guess to start, a brief history. Guns N' Roses comes out like a house fire, 87, 88. All of the things that came and went and the rise to fame and all of the drug issues, personnel changes, and things that followed. And then we get to 93, 94. I paraphrase like a lot. But so at 93, 94, they're starting to slip apart. Axl is up to his usual shenanigans, not showing up hours and hours late, infuriating crowds, and Slash, Duff, Izzy are all loaded full of heroin by this point and having a lot of issues. So they part ways in 93 to 94. And what we want to know is, what if they didn't? So I don't know. What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
Well, first of all, I don't know if this podcast should be called What If Guns N' Roses Didn't Break Up in 93, as much as it should be What If Axl Rose Were Not an Asshole.
I think that's a fair start.
I think all the problems kind of come back to him, right?
Yeah, and then what was it? Was it after the release, not to jump around, but after the release of Chinese Democracy, or prior to that, during public appearances, he looked like Meatloaf or like a swollen tomato.
Oh, yeah, in that period with the football jerseys and the cornrows.
Oh, God, that was embarrassing.
It's like he and Mickey Rourke really had something going. You couldn't tell who was who for a little while there.
It was a bad scene.
Oh,
bad
for
look
sure.
For sure.
The one thing I'm going to say in defense of Axl and all his craziness, Axl was a great frontman. Axl still is. He's still running the stage. I mean, he's bigger and he can't hit some of the notes he used to, but he's out there busting his ass every night, and that's more than other 60-plus-year-olds I know are doing these days. So, but what's unique about the situation is that everybody talks about what an asshole Axl was, and he clearly was. A good frontman always has a serious ego issue. But at the same time, he was largely babysitting Slash, Duff, and Izzy, who were loaded full of heroin and whiskey every day. And he was very frustrated as well.
Well, here's the difference, right? They may have been loaded on heroin or whatever they were loaded on, and he was sober, yet he's the only one who couldn't show up for performances.
That's fair. Everybody else, despite their many addictions, managed to be at the stage on time for the tens of thousands of people who paid probably $40 to $90 to see them in the
I would say the exception may have been one of the original members, Steven Adler, who was unceremoniously fired from the band.
Yeah,
because he couldn't keep control of his addictions. He was addicted to cocaine and heroin, and he claims that the band threw him under the bus because everyone at the time was using. And then, of course, it all culminated. His firing had all what ended up happening was he wasn't able to lay down any drum tracks whatsoever. And it got to the point where the band gave him an ultimatum and said, hey, listen, you've got 30 days to promise that you're not going to abuse drugs. And it was like a probationary period. And if you break that contract, you're out. And of course, he couldn't keep his word and he got kicked out. But like you just mentioned earlier, a lot of these guys were using
Yeah.
I guess somehow they were able to play their instruments as well as they could, but Steven Adler was maybe an outlier in that
Yeah.
situation, which is a bit of a shame because he was a great drummer.
He was, man. The drum tracks on Appetite for Destruction, top to bottom, are solid. But I
Yeah.
did read that, like, there were, during the Appetite tours, even songs that he was struggling with already to play out as
That's
he
what I
was.
heard too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you listen to some journalists, some music journalists, they say he may not have been able to cut it at that level. So
Yeah.
he was able to lay down the tracks, in the studio, but could he repeat that night after night? Was that because he was loaded on heroin or whatever, or was it because he just wasn't that caliber of musician that the rest of them were?
Yeah. And when you talk about these guys and then we talk about them being trashed, it's important to fully grasp the idea that, these guys were drinking more than a fifth a day of whiskey. They were, I mean, we're talking hard, like the kind of stuff that if I spent 30 minutes with them, I'm confident that I wouldn't go back to work this week. Like I
You
would
might
be
not have gone to work ever.
Yeah, ever.
Yeah. I mean, unless, go surreal, in which case, then maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
Parting with those guys, I mean, to me at least, that seems like a death sentence for a regular person who's just not used to that lifestyle,
yeah, it does. I saw the other day, I was watching an interview with Tommy Lee talking about how they remembered, like, in the early days, like the Appetite for Destruction days, which would have been the girls days for Motley Crue. So we're talking about two groups of guys in the middle of their chemical alteration height. And Tommy says, they thought they could outdrink us. So he talks about him and Nikki Sixx sitting down one night. I think it was at the Rainbow with Slash and Duff, and go and drink for drink all night, and said we had to carry him back to their hotel room.
Oh, damn.
Which is, it just kind of illustrating of the level of the amount of drug access there was in those days. Like, you're
Especially
talking about
in the Hollywood scene, man.
Oh yeah,
Everyone was using blow.
yeah, and everything they could get their hands on.
Oh, for sure.
It was a wild time, and it's an interesting one to look back on because it hasn't. I would say it probably hasn't aged well in the world of public opinion, just based on the difference in social life in
Right.
1986 versus 2020.
Makes sense.
It was rowdy. It was neat. If you ever get a chance to visit the Rainbow Room, like, you can go to, like, their booth, the booth where all the pictures you've seen of Guns N' Roses were taken. It's just a booth in a restaurant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's a really, really neat place with a lot of history from bands of that era and before. I mean, Johnny Rivers and them were playing on the Sunset Strip back in the 50s. So,
Yeah, but I think the difference between Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses, yeah, they could both party, but Guns N' Roses were the real deal. I mean,
yes.
they were the rock and roll band that brought back rock and roll in that time.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was kind of a lull, during the late 80s. I think Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction actually knocked Tracy Chapman off the #1 spot at that time on the Billboard
And that
chart.
was 87.
That part was a great song too.
But it just shows you, like, where the music scene was in that time. I don't personally think Motley Crue had half the talent of Guns N' Roses.
It's interesting because they both fill a similar gap to me. They came out at the time of hair metal. And sure, they both had the hair, but they were also both significantly heavier than most of the other bands playing at that time. And a lot more raw, a lot more. Both of them, I would argue, at that period were still very, very authentic.
Yeah,
I would argue the crew just had a little more experience at that moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, minus the androgyny that was very popular with bands like Poison and Skid Row. I mean, to an extent, even Skid Row had that big hair, but they had a bit of a different feel to them. But I think it's important mentioning that, like, we talked about the 80s, but then you had the 70s glam rock sort of movement that
Slade.
Which, by the way, like I love T-Rex and Mark Bolan. I thought T-Rex was one of the best bands, rock and roll bands to come about, but that was during the glam era. And I feel like, when you were getting into the early to mid 80s, where in 87 Appetite for Destruction was released, I think by that point, some of the hair metal aesthetics for Guns N' Roses had changed. Oh no, some of the big hair and stuff had remained, but really what changed was the direction of rock and roll. You started seeing them distance themselves away from some of those, hair metal acts that, again, practice androgyny and weren't all that great musically. And obviously the glam era had died. And I think that Guns N' Roses was largely responsible for putting the final nail in the coffin for that genre.
I agree with that. And the interesting thing about Appetite is that, at its core, that's a heavy record. It's a hard hitter. It holds no punches. The instrumentation is great. The lyrics are great. The production is great. In many ways, you could argue it was a damn punk record.
It was ahead of its time.
But it was it was heavy. The chords were different. Things were not. It was the perfect bridge between Poison and Nirvana, in my opinion. Is that
it's so hard to pin it down,
Yeah.
Like a song like It's So Easy has so many different directions that it goes in throughout the song.
What a baseline.
It's got a little bit of grunge in there. It's got a little bit of punk in there. It's got some hard, heavy rock, almost metal. So if they had stayed together and kept that same vision, I'm wondering if they would have continued to go out more in those directions. As grunge was getting bigger and bigger, would they have followed suit with the likes of Nirvana and Pearl Jam? Or would they have continued to do their own thing and keep elements of that?
There were elements of that in the Use Your Illusion albums, in my opinion. But I mean, there's always been a punk rock element to Guns N' Roses, like in terms of, if nothing else, just Duff McKagan.
Yeah.
Duff grew up punk through and through. And, every night live, he still plays Attitude. Every night, the Misfits Attitude. And it's
Nice.
It's solid. It's kind of one of those, let's give everybody else a break to go get a drink of water and use the bathroom because we're all 60 now.
Yeah.
But it belongs there. And I believe it was on Spaghetti Incident, if I'm
One
not
of the covers?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
Attitude was on there. And but it's good, and there's that. They just didn't give a shit. That's what it was. Like, you saw interviews, and I mean, we're talking these guys that are at the beginning of their fame, the point where everyone comes out and they're all smiling and they're giddy, and it was not that with Guns N' Roses. Like, they came out, Slash would sit down, he might go to sleep on the damn table during an interview. He absolutely walked out and sat a bottle of Jack Daniels down beside him. Like, it was the image, but it was the image because it was his reality, in my opinion. Like it wasn't just the image. It was, I'm going to drink a bottle or two of Jack Daniels every day.
Oh, he lived it. I mean, people around him will tell you, like, he lived that lifestyle.
Yeah.
That wasn't just a persona. That wasn't an on-stage persona. And I think that is something that was missing in rock and roll in that time. When you have those like hair metal bands, they have this on-stage persona, but then they go back, and I think we might have talked about this on a previous podcast. It's like they would go back and then they'd be eating like tofu wraps and like, drinking like seltzer water, and they'd be drinking Jack on stage.
That's what they're all doing when they tour now, but it's not, but with Guns N' Roses, that was not the case. Yeah. Those guys.
Yeah. I was curious to know, like, that aesthetic you mentioned in the interviews where like Slash was completely just zonked out of his mind and falling asleep and whatever. How much do you think Guns N' Roses being in the public spotlight and being on MTV and having that access to a lot of media, their demeanor during those interviews, how does that play when it comes to their personal lives or their stage personas? Do you feel like there may have been a pressure for them to maintain that public persona, and how does that translate to stage performance and what was going on behind the scenes, or was it just more authentic than I'm giving it credit for?
I think there's always a there's always the risk of becoming a caricature of yourself. I mean, if you look at like Hunter S. Thompson, he felt
Sure.
this pressure to be this person that he was in his novels, and like what everybody had built him up to be. And I think that contributed to his health problems later in life. So I do think at a certain point that catches up with you. In '87, I believe that was 100% their personalities. That's just who they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether that caught up to them later on, yeah, I don't know. It's a good point.
Yeah, I feel like in those early days it was definitely mostly genuine. I mean, probably there was some Electra PR person chasing him around and making sure, here, put your glasses on, or something like that. But I doubt that anyone sat down and said, all right, Slash, here's the image we'd like you to project. And that he would have given even one tiny fuck about it, probably. That's my guess.
Right.
But I could be wrong. And, the other thing is, they don't really run around like faking that anymore. I mean, he's still out there in black jeans, leather jacket, and a top hat. But he's thankfully not just carrying around an empty bottle of whiskey to look good and things.
Right.
So I feel like they managed to get away from that. But they were going at a pace that was just not going to be sustainable. Guns N' Roses at its core kind of involves that pace. Like, we're 5 years into their reunion tour right now, for example. It just keeps going. We keep hearing there's going to be a new record, there's going to be a new this, and there have been some songs, but they're not technically new. They're actually leftovers from the Chinese Democracy sessions that they are re-recording with the OG band, And
so
speaking, Aaron, you look like you've got a thought.
Yeah. Speaking of, projecting images, and it's like Guns N' Roses is just shrouded in controversy, no matter which angle you look at it from, right? So how much of like the controversy that we saw early on was them trying to push the envelope, or like, were they trying to be ironic at times, or did they just not give a fuck and like, this is what they said, so this is what they meant? Like a song like One in a Million, right? Where, I mean, they use the N-word, they use the bad F word.
Which F word is that, Aaron?
I think it's the F slur is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I believe it's the F slur. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, were they trying to be ironic? Like when Axl Rose comes on stage and sings Civil War in a rebel jacket that's got a Confederate flag on the back of it, like, what statement is he trying to make there? Like,
I would say that like back then it was all about shock value. I mean, antics like that, what was being reported in the media, or at the very least, what was getting whispered amongst rock fans at some of these venues, it helped to get asses in seats. People were buying the records, people were going to the shows, and whether or not that was authentic or if they were just playing it up for laughs didn't matter, because it was guaranteed to broaden your fan base and get people buying your records. So at that point, I think it's kind of irrelevant. No?
Yeah, I'd say so. And there was always this weird like fashion thing going on with Axl.
Yeah.
That we've talked about a little bit. And
let's talk about the bicycle shorts. Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Okay, now even before that, like, what you should know is that in like 1988, they came to a town nearby the rural area where I grew up. They opened for
Skid Row.
Skid Row. Aerosmith, but I think it was Alice Cooper.
Sorry, I was jumping ahead to the St. Louis disaster.
We'll talk St. Louis in a few. That's another interesting.
Please go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're good. He came out that night in a leather vest, denim cutoff shorts, tall cowboy boots, and a bandana. And I don't know if that was a conscious decision or if that was just the 4 items that would cover the necessary parts the fastest that he found. Because he had this vibe where he came out crazy. And then you've got Duff McKagan, who would always be in like a fishnet shirt with this giant log chain around his neck with a padlock on it that apparently he didn't take off until he got sober. I read about in what's his book called? Duff McKagan's book, It's So Easy and Other Lies, is a great book.
Nice.
It's really interesting. But yeah, a lot of that like craziness felt real. But we should absolutely discuss St. Louis.
Yeah.
Well, it's your
It was a
hometown.
riot. Literally a riot. Yeah.
It's about 8 minutes from where I'm sitting while we're recording this podcast.
That's
It's a place
wild.
it was at that time Riverport Amphitheater.
Yeah.
It has since, it became PNC Bank Pavilion or something like, not PNC. It became a couple other things over the years.
Still
Now
hosting
it's
shows there, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we
Great.
go to half a dozen shows there every summer.
Nice.
It's like, you know how every city has its big auditorium that every tour circles through, and there's like 4 shows a week. That's ours. And Guns N' Roses comes through, and I believe the show started late anyways, is my understanding. There were some other things going on. But during that, the story goes that a guy was in the crowd who happened to be from one of our regional biker gangs, the Saddle Tramps. And he was taking pictures of Axl from the crowd. The thing you've got to understand, and I'm going to say this for any young people listening, is that now we take pictures galore at shows, and it's not a big deal. It used to be, because since we didn't have access to photos everywhere and the internet at our fingertips, people paid money for those. People sold them in hobby shops, things like that. The bands never got any money from it. So controlling cameras in a venue was a big thing for bands at that time. And Axl spots this guy taking pictures in the crowd, and he tells security, "Hey, deal with that." Security didn't do anything. He hollers again, "Deal with that." They didn't deal with it. He says, "Fuck it, I will." And then Axl Rose, in a pair of cowboy boots, denim cut-off shorts, and a white mink stole-looking thing, dives headfirst into the crowd to attack the guy with the camera. And apparently got a few good shots in, and was then, it kicked off this giant riot known as, the Guns N' Roses St. Louis riot.
And that dude ruptured a disc in his spine after Axl had clobbered him.
Yeah, Axl clobbered him pretty good. Like Axl was the one who got pulled away by security in the end. And but what it led to is he got on stage, Slash is there, and he says, "Fuck it, we're going home," and throws the microphone down on the stage and walks off. And then the 29-ish thousand people that Riverport fills with, because it was Guns N' Roses, it was absolutely full, they got pissed, and they went onto the stage, destroyed their equipment, stole their equipment. Like, I'm not going to get too deep on it, but I mean, I personally know a guy who speaks of having a speaker cabinet, or that used to have a speaker cabinet that was acquired at that show. Like,
did
my
the fans not uproot bolted down chairs and throw them on the stage? I don't know if that's humanly possible, but yeah, they were bolted down, and somehow these animals were able to get in there and just rip them out and destroy things. So
yeah, it
was
was
weird.
It was crazy, and they left town, and city of St. Louis, or probably St. Louis County, because technically this didn't happen in the city of St. Louis. He got charges filed against him, and had to fly back 2 or 3 times for various hearings, and eventually settled on a fine and some other stuff that was pretty substantial, as I recall, if we even heard. And that Guns N' Roses never welcome in the city of St. Louis again.
No shit.
In perpetuity.
No way. Wow.
So when they came back here in, I'm going to say 2016, and it's not going to be right, I saw them at the where the Rams used to play here.
Mm-hmm.
But when they came back, it was the first time they'd been to the city since 1993. Like, they were not welcome, and they made a big deal out of wanting to play St. Louis on the tour, and that it either needed to be the first show or the very last one. And when they came to town, every news station in the city relives the interesting stories. There are still people in this city who hate Axl Rose's guts for what happened. That were really bitter about, screw him. The only person he screwed was me. It's my money, my tickets. Mm-hmm. I didn't get to see Guns N' Roses. All I got was attitude, and there are people who feel that way. There are people who were concerned about, the risk and what happened in the community that night, because it was pretty rowdy. But they came back. It just took 30 years.
Corey, I wanted to
Yes, sir.
ask you a question. As a lifelong diehard Guns N' Roses fan, were you personally pissed off at Axl for
No.
that, for never coming back to St. Louis?
No, and only because they broke up. Like I say, they never like technically broke up. What happened is everybody just kind of went away, and eventually it was just Axl. But I was never pissed. But I was also not a person who was ever stuck at a show for 2.5 hours waiting for him to show up and then cutting a show short when 11 o'clock curfew hit. There are people who very much had a right to be very pissed about what happened here and about what happened with Axl on a lot of nights. But with that said, my understanding is he's doing really good these days and that he's at every show early. He did promise us he would be here on time as well the night of the night he came to St. Louis. They interviewed him. They did several interviews around it. It was really funny. There's some great news footage. I'll try to find some and stick it in the description to the YouTube video.
Only took 30 years for him to get his shit together.
Yeah, 25 maybe, but yeah, a lot.
So, but you bring up an interesting point about the fact that they never really did break up. I mean, it was just a case of Axl leaving, Izzy leaving, and then Axl getting like. Sorry, did I say Axl leaving? If I did, I meant.
No, you said Slash and Izzy, but I mean, there's also Duff. There's.
Yeah, I think Izzy was the the main catalyst for this, because like Izzy got sober while everybody else was still loaded, and he just didn't want to put up with Axl's shit anymore. Like he said, okay, I'll turn up for the show. I'm not even going to take the bus with you guys. Like I'm just going to show up for the show, and then I'm going to leave after the show. And if you're not there, then whatever. Like I have my solo career. Like I don't care anymore.
Yeah,
and infamously, the band would fly to their gigs, but Izzy would always do road trips. He loved to travel. Yeah, he would pack his trailer with his motorcycles and kind of do his thing. And he would actually, I think he said in an interview, despite the majority of the band traveling in an airplane, he was always the first one there, traveling by van. So it's got to say something. I mean, you bring up a good point, Aaron. They were very much still in party mode where Izzy was trying to get his shit straight, and he did. And then that will only take you so far if who you're playing with is a bunch of drug addicts.
Yeah, and Axl Rose,
right? Whose ego is monstrous.
Oh, prima donna and a bunch of drug addicts.
So fucked up. Just a recipe for disaster.
And it was. One of the weird things about that is Izzy was one of the first to go, but Izzy was also like one of the first in the band to discover heroin. Like I think they met Izzy as a heroin dealer, and some of the rest of the band that was kind of their. I mean, not like he got them on it, but like it might have been their introduction, and it's an interesting dynamic because for a while before he left, he was already pretty done. Like the Axl not showing up thing got really old for Izzy really quick. He felt like it was just unprofessional bullshit. And
when they brought in the new guitarist, new rhythm guitarist and backup singer, apparently Slash was not happy with the choice.
Yeah, Gilby Clark.
So that created a rift between the two. And then Slash decided to go, and then Axl just had this kind of rotating group of musicians who came in, and as great as a song,
a bunch of great ones.
Well, yeah, I mean, great studio musicians, great singers.
Yeah, we're on Bumblefoot, Buckethead.
Buckethead is a huge standout for me.
Buckethead, yeah. I mean, to have had Buckethead and Bumblefoot at once is, not at once, but like back to back. That was a pretty killer lineup. Like any other band, I'd like to think. I just can't see how you couldn't succeed with that.
Yeah, I feel like Buckethead was like the West Borland of Guns N' Roses. What do you think?
That's fair,
right?
I always felt like.
I mean, Borland never really left, but I kind of got the whole aesthetic with just the way that he looked and the way that he played. I mean, he was a great player, but he just gave me West Borland vibes for some reason.
As a Slash diehard young man who had no idea who Buckethead was. At the time, I thought his KFC bucket was mocking Slash's top hat, like this guy.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, what the hell? I didn't realize that was like his thing. He's
Yeah,
Right.
no, he's just a weird dude. You know?
Yeah,
Just
he's just a
really
weird dude.
strange. But he could
Very-
play.
Hell yeah, he could play. I mean, you know, I still enjoy listening to Chinese Democracy for Buckethead solos.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to replace a band that had Slash in it, I feel like he's one of the few choices that you could maybe have to make it even better potentially.
Yeah.
You know, very, very different styles. I mean, he brought an incredibly different style to Guns N' Roses and to that album. But if you listen to just the guitar tracks without everything else, like everything stripped away, I mean, it's cool just to listen to because he's got such a unique style.
Mhm.
The interesting thing about Chinese Democracy that is strange to me is that, like, you know, some of this music was being written on the Use Your Illusion tours in 92, 93, 94. And it was being written. It was intended for the original band at the time. What was ready was. And as it comes together, we're looking at a time when bands were rising to the top, like Nine Inch Nails, other industrial bands like Ministry and shit. And Axl really kind of dug that industrial feel. So one of the things you'll notice is that it's kind of present on Chinese Democracy in some places, I feel like. And it was the place that was most evident was they did a song called "Oh My God" on an Arnold Schwarzenegger film in the mid '90s.
Terminator
Oh.
2.
No, not
Was it
Terminator
Last
2.
Action Hero?
That was where You Could Be Mine went. This one,
Oh, right.
was, "Oh My God,"
Okay.
and
It wasn't Last
it
Action
is
Hero,
straight
was it?
industrial.
No, it
Do I?
definitely
Yeah.
wasn't Last Action Hero. No, I thought maybe the film was Last Action Hero, but that doesn't make
What a
sense.
great soundtrack on that one, though.
It's true.
It's a good
Great
one.
soundtrack. Shit movie.
Shit,
I
always
liked it.
loved the movie.
I actually really dug that film. I don't know. Maybe
I know, like,
maybe it was
action
because it was my
folks really-
youth, but what's that?
It's probably a youth thing for me.
Yeah, me too.
I've always had a soft spot because it had Megadeth doing like "Angry Again" or something, and it was a killer soundtrack, and it was an okay movie. It was one of those that there are certain movies that I've found over the years are better left as memories.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I haven't rewatched that film in years. But
Yeah.
to get back to Chinese Democracy,
Oh yeah,
like,
Chinese Democracy.
here's the thing. It was lauded by critics. Everyone seemed to hate it. And to this day, I haven't heard a single track on it.
Wow.
Well, here's
I
the deal.
just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lot of people didn't because it was a Best Buy exclusive when it came out in 2008. So who's going to Best Buy specifically to buy the new Guns N' Roses album? Maybe it was just bad publicity that they did, or bad marketing that they did. But, you know, maybe a lot of people just didn't even know where to get the album.
I will
That's true.
also add that in 1998 we found Napster. And that really changed a lot to do with the record industry. So there are a lot of albums in that era that maybe might have done better had we had any idea how to count illegal downloads.
Right.
Because streaming's
I remember
brand
the
new.
whole Napster thing. Remember
But like, the first
LimeWire? That
time
was
I
another
bought-
one.
When
Yeah.
I first bought Chinese Democracy, it was in a bargain bin, like a year after it came out, because everybody assumed it's going to be huge. It's a new Guns N' Roses record. They bought millions of them, and people didn't care.
You know,
largely.
there are some great
There's some
tracks
good
on that
music.
album. There are some great tracks on that album. It got panned, you know, by audiences and by critics alike. But you know, a song like "This I Love" was like a follow up to "November Rain." I mean, it was an awesome track. You know, it was a rock ballad that was not around in that time, around 2008. You know, so I do think it gets more hate than it deserves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's honestly, it's less hate for the music than it was hate for Axl by the fans. I think the fans 100% blamed Axl for all of Guns N' Roses' problems.
Mhm.
And plenty of it was, but I wouldn't say it was entirely. Of course, I'm looking from the outside. I was reading this shit through Hit Parader and Circus Magazine as a teenager, Metal Edge, And but Chinese Democracy has songs that they still play every night too. Like Madagascar, they still play it. It's a great song. They play. Oh shit!
Do they play better?
I don't think they play better.
I
They
love
might.
that number.
They might. I'd have to look. You can pull up online like their set list history and see how many times some of those songs have been played. It'd be a fun side project.
So what you guys are saying that the album's worth checking out.
It's worth checking out.
Oh, absolutely.
It's heavier.
I might do that. I don't know why I've had such an aversion to that record. I think when it came out, when was it released? Do you remember?
98?
2008.
It was 98.
No, it was
okay.
2008.
It's 2008.
Okay,
2008.
yeah. So when I found out about, it's crazy. It just blew Corey's mind. No, it's fine. 2008. So in 2008, I was going to shows at CBGB's, now the defunct premier punk rock club that New York City had to offer. So I remember hearing the news about the release of Chinese Democracy. I was on a train heading back from Manhattan to Long Island. And when I heard the news, one of the punk kids that was in the train had mentioned that he heard it and that it was shit. And the minute I heard that, I'm like, yup, I'm not going to listen to that record. And that's it.
That's how teenagers roll.
And from that point, I have not listened to it because some punk rocker on a train just drunk off his mind as we were heading back home said, fuck that record. And I'm like, you know what? As 20-year-old something, I'm like, you know what? Fuck that record. And that was it.
Yeah.
So based on that encounter, that's exactly why I've never heard Chinese Democracy.
That's the perfect microcosm of why it was hated. It really is. That's what happened. Is people were like, man, I don't even give a shit if it's good. I just don't want to hear it because it's not the real Guns N' Roses. And like Axl went through, 4 lineups during the Chinese Democracies. Really, 2008? I was saying Napster, thinking 1990. I had no idea it took 15 years for him to put it out. I thought it was, man, time is funny.
No, we're old as shit, Corey. I can't speak for Aaron, but we are fucking dinosaurs.
Hey, I feel it too.
We are. And Aaron's day will come.
Yeah, you know what?
No, Aaron, you'll get there. For sure.
I may have heard a couple of tracks from Chinese Democracy from LimeWire.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Dude, you could get it before the album came out. It was available on Napster. I probably still have those downloads, and it's not the same album that released. They're early demos and shit that were out online.
So I was like, 13, 14, and I was probably like, smoking weed and like downloading rock and roll albums on LimeWire and like hearing Chinese Democracy. I was like, oh yeah, the shit is good.
I think I liken Chinese Democracy to Metallica. And the reason I do is because there's like the loyalist fans of Metallica. Who, like people were accusing Metallica of selling out on the Ride the Lightning album because there was an acoustic guitar on Fade to Black. When they came through St. Louis two weeks ago, it was the largest marketing extravaganza I'd ever seen across the city in my life. I'm like, those people don't have a clue. No. But what happened is Metallica kind of evolved with the times. They got a little older, kind of got into some hard rock kind of stuff, a little blues influence. And different generations love different eras. I discovered in walking around that show, you'd see people in Load shirts, St. Anger shirts, and you could tell that was just their Metallica. Like for me, it was Injustice for All. And it's that way with Guns N' Roses, to put a bow on it, bring it back. They just weren't going to like anything they did later. Whether it was with, I don't even know if like Spaghetti. Wow, I can't talk. I'm losing my brain here. Like,
it's all right. It's the perfect time for it. We're on a podcast.
It is. That's right. What better time to just have a large brain fart?
No problem, dude. You'll get there.
I'll get there. And I just don't think anyone cared. I don't think they wanted to like it. I think kind of the moment had passed. But that they eventually have come back together, I think is a really good thing. Because like my generation, lots of my generation never got a chance to see them, and for those songs that have really stood the test of time, like I mean, people know most of the songs on Appetite for Destruction. It's one of those rare albums that like if you just put it on, every one of them's a banger. They're just
right.
great.
if I'm right, I don't think Paradise City or Welcome to the Jungle, and definitely not Sweet Child of Mine, were ever singles from that album either. I think
No,
well,
Sweet Child of Mine was a single,
Sweet Child, well, Sweet Child
and
of Mine
it
was
was the
kind of a
only
grower, you know?
it was
It's
the
like,
only dude. It was the only single that went #1 on the Billboard
Yeah.
was
charts.
it? Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it was a very
okay,
popular video.
okay.
And there was "It's So Easy," then "Welcome to the Jungle," and then "Sweet Child of Mine" is when everything went nuts.
And
hmm
Mr. Brownstone was
Mr. Brownstone was the B-side to "It's So
was
Easy."
it?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And for what it's worth, I would also argue that, "Welcome to the Jungle," "Sweet Child of Mine," "Paradise City" are not the three best songs on that record.
right.
I mean, they're great, but to me, Rocket Queen, Mr. Brownstone, "Out to Get Me," "You're Crazy" is a great song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like "Out to Get Me" is a kick the doors in, hard rocking butt kicker. I don't
You know
know.
what's interesting too about Appetite for Destruction was how it was kind of a dud at first, and then once Welcome to the Jungle, once that music video came out and it was all over MTV and the radio started picking it up, is when they really exploded.
Took about a
Yeah,
year.
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
because
you're
MTV didn't
right.
want to play the
I'm pretty
video.
sure you're right. What's that?
MTV didn't want to play the video,
Is
and
that right?
yeah, for "Welcome to the Jungle,"
Okay.
because they had bought. I saw this in a documentary an hour before this. It's something I didn't know. They had bought the rights to lots of news footage from NBC, CBS, and ABC, is what Axl said in an interview.
Hmm.
And they had it all cut in to the video to make "Welcome to the Jungle" this, like, political Rage Against the Machine kind of impact.
Mhm.
And MTV's like, "No, that shit's got to go, guys."
It had to have gotten
Way too violent.
some play though, right?
Yeah. Well,
I
they cut
mean,
it all out, and then it
oh
got a
right,
lot.
yeah.
And I mean, I remember the beginning of that video so well. Like, Axl on the street corner, he's in like a flannel, trying to step on a bus, and it's
But they had no problem with Sweet Child of Mine. Like once they had gotten a hold of that, that got all the MTV play.
yeah.
Yeah.
"Sweet Child of Mine" was the ballad, man. The ballad's what made all those bands. Like, Poison's rockin' songs were not what put them where they were. What put them where they were was "Every Rose Has Its Thorn" and "Something to Believe In," instead of "Talk Dirty to Me" and "Look What the Cat Dragged In," which are
Yeah.
much heavier songs.
It
But
was it was kind of the age of ballads.
it was the power ballad era. Yeah.
So let me pose a question here. I mean,
Yeah.
like everybody knows that Axl Rose is kind of an asshole. Like he didn't show up to a lot of his shows. He was what created a lot of the infighting between the band. But what if everybody had just gotten on board with Axl Rose's vision, right? Like he had, he had the ballads in him. He had November Rain, which I believe was off Use Your Illusion, either 1 or 2. I can't remember. But like, where he's got like these backup singers and like it's a whole production, right? And it seemed like, especially like Izzy didn't want to go that direction. Like he wanted to be more of a straight up rock band, 4 or 5 piece rock band. Like, and like, as you said, Corey, Axl was into this industrial stuff. He was into, adding more elements to the band. What if they had just gone along with his vision and created what he wanted to create? Do you think that they could have, come out with more of these like ballads that would have become #1 hits, or they could have gone like a more experimental direction where, it may not have had like critic success or mainstream success, but be known by people within the music scene, like Radiohead or maybe even like
Yeah.
REM.
I would not. There are so many directions it could have gone. They
Mm.
could have continued along that path, because like you went from the rawest of raw rock and roll. I mean, if you watch that show in 1987 of Guns N' Roses live at the Ritz in New York City, that it aired live on or not live, but it aired on MTV in like in 87, 88. But it's on YouTube everywhere. If you watch that, it is just raw, sweaty, grimy, nasty. These guys haven't washed their hair in a month. It was just raw rock and roll. Where by the time you get to November Rain, what you're putting out is more of a composition. I mean, it's got horns and cellos and
Piano.
it's got layers, and it's
Sure.
Axl's Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, it's his big production. Now, the question is that the road they take, or do they at some point decide to pull back and go the route of the, you know, that raw rock and roll? And I think from honestly the way Chinese Democracy turned out, I think they continue that Use Your Illusion route. Like those are big songs with deep, heavy themes, lots of imagery. You know, the show would have been bigger. The songs were more bold in some ways, and more
And the thing with me
complex.
is, I'm sorry. I
You're
was going
okay.
to say
You're okay.
I can't imagine having a record full of nothing but power ballads.
No,
I think
no.
I'd tear my fucking hair out.
Yeah.
And the thing with me is, like, you know, being super into punk rock, like, I'm used to my songs being very, very quick. There's some
Efficient.
exceptions, but we want, at least what I want out of music is, and it's not. I mean, right now I have a very tasty music. I listen from everything from, you know, jazz to hip hop to punk rock
Yeah.
to alt metal and stuff like that. I mean, just about anything. But I like my songs to be structured to the, not to the same extent as a ballad, but something that I can put on and listen to for 2-3 minutes and call it good. I mean, November Rain was like an 8 to 9 minute track, and as much as I love it, having an album populated by nothing but that would drive me as a casual listener absolutely insane.
Yeah. I don't think they'd have ever gone fully that way. But what
Right.
I can see is a more produced, more polished direction I think they might have wound up going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the end, yeah, Chinese Democracy is pretty industrial, you know. But if that band, if that same nucleus had stayed together, I think they'd have probably just continued on that path. But there were, I think, creative differences as much as there were personal differences and business differences and all of those things.
So, unpopular opinion, Axl Rose was a genius and nobody else could see that.
I won't argue against it. I think Axl was a quite the musical genius with and with an ego that made him really, really hard for him to control that and use it effectively.
Yeah, I think he embodied both the hero and the villain. He had this duplicity when it came to what he was and who he was, I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty astute because, you know, he'll be the first one to tell you he has bipolar disorder. So, you know, that's where that dichotomy
that explains
comes from.
those late 80s and all of the chemical problems. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think he was actually on medication for, like, they called it manic depression back then before bipolar was a thing. So, you know, he was the hero and the villain of his own story because he you know, he did have these bouts of rage as well. And that's maybe where some of the controversy came from. You know, and like, they are a super controversial band. You know, like, look at the track that they did, the cover on GNR Lies of Charles Manson's, what is it? Get Your Game Girl.
Look at your game girl. Look at her game girl. Something like that. Yeah. I don't know the name. I just remember that one time I left the cassette playing too long, and all of a sudden there was this weird song I didn't really care for that played on Spaghetti Incident. And
Spaghetti Incident. Sorry. Yeah.
But I think the song was like "Look at Your Game Girl" or something like that.
Yeah, it was "Look at Your Game Girl." Yeah,
that's and it's you know, it was written by Charles Manson. it was so. I mean, you know, if they wanted to do it, I don't have a problem with doing it. But it was not. It was not anything special. It was very much the shock value of having.
I was just going to say, was that a calculated move to include that on the record?
Well, you know, he wore Manson shirts on stage and stuff pretty regularly.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Charlie, not Marilyn. Just for anyone listening who maybe doesn't realize that.
Yeah,
and it was. He often wore things that had, you know, loudmouth political statements. And frankly, we talked about St. Louis a few minutes ago, and I'm afraid I might have given the impression that was like the only riot. And apparently They had a number of them. I think there was one in Toronto. I believe there was maybe something in Europe, somewhere.
One happened out by me, Nassau Coliseum
Oh,
in
wow.
Uniondale, New York.
Nassau by you.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
Nassau Coliseum, huge venue. The Islanders would play there. But yeah, no, it was well documented that there was a huge fucking riot there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it was
there were
everywhere.
a lot of those.
Yeah,
I'll never be able to figure this guy out. It's like why he decides to do a Charles Manson song. And to be fair, they did it better than Charles Manson did, which
Yeah.
is
Oh yeah.
which is not hard. I
Right.
mean, neither tracks were great, but it was a step up from the original.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand like why he goes out on stage like wearing a jacket with a Confederate flag on it, and like why he decides to cover a Charles Manson song.
I think it was all shock.
I think so
Could be.
too.
Could
I
be.
think he liked the feeling of being the center of attention,
Mhm.
and he was always the center of attention on stage. But he had the ability to be the center of attention beyond Guns N' Roses and Guns N' Roses fans when he went really nuts. So
Well,
that's
yeah,
how
with
he
Guns
made
N'
good music.
Roses, yeah, it's like the band created news for music again. Like that wasn't a thing that was happening at the time. It was like since the time of like the Stones and the Beatles and like maybe Zeppelin. You didn't have headlining news about rock groups.
Yeah,
And Guns N' Roses kind of brought that back. And I don't know if it's just because of the music, because like how huge Appetite for Destruction was, or because of the political statements that Axl was making, and whether that was a calculated decision as well to try and get them more on the radar of like mainstream news.
I think Axl was the only one in the band that was calculated. I think Duff, Izzy, slash Steven, and I'm not saying that Axl wasn't the real deal. What I'm going to say is that Axl was kind of the brains in how to get it where it needed to be, the band, and I think he did that well. He's very much the one who would have been dealing with contract shit and things like that. Like that wasn't Slash and Duff's style, you know. And he did well with that. He did well with taking the band up to that next level with Use Your Illusion. These were songs on the Hot 100. That's the thing that's difficult to think about now in a world where rock and roll is never in the top 40 these days. I mean, there are things we might call rock and roll, or if the Rolling Stones release a new song, that counts as rock and roll and it gets there. But like new young rock and roll bands were what the chart was full of.
Yeah, you're finding rock and roll, or that edge that we talked about, like that punk edge, and a lot of these younger artists coming up that maybe started in rap, but then started including or incorporating rock elements and certainly that attitude into their music. So you're seeing, I think, the younger generation that's into much different things that don't really look back fondly on like the 70s or the 60s or the 80s. All they know is about what they're into now. And you saw a lot of these younger artists sort of going out and playing alley pop punk songs. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to use this as an example, but Christ, what's his name?
Machine Gun Kelly.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Machine Gun. Thank you. Machine Gun Kelly he had this huge rap career, and then he put out 2 pop punk records with Travis Barker behind the kit.
And they're good.
And they're not, it's debatable.
As modern rock, as things on the top 40 go.
Right.
They are really good.
Right.
You can't ask for much these days.
Yeah. I mean, hip hop is what's huge now. It's 50 years of hip hop at this point. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we talked about this, Corey, outside the show.
Yeah,
that hip hop started in the late to early '80s, and this sort of gained speed, going from being very underground and having like these big block parties and these like these pop up shows in people's basements and stuff. Yeah, and then it's become this huge genre that's been going strong for 50 years, and now it's become more relevant than it ever was. And it's a shame too. I think one of the things that is preventing certain rock artists from breaking out is that their frontman isn't an Axl Rose.
Yeah.
It isn't a Brian Johnson. There's
Yeah.
no there's no real appeal to some of these bands because none of their players stand out as, rock stars. There's nobody bring in these younger crowds because a lot of these bands just aren't as interesting as they used to be. That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
They aren't. I blame a lot of it on the loss of dynamics in music.
Yeah.
There's very much a just monotone approach to everything now that like it's what keeps me away. Now, with that said, there is great new music out there, and that's kind of the message that I hope to scream from the fences with Armchair Rockstars, that there is great rock and roll, but it ain't on Billboard.
No.
And you got to dig a little, and that's what we do. We dig through all the crappy music. Aaron knows I spend my Friday mornings listening to crappy music and pulling one song out of 50 as the all right. That's it. They're a keeper, And but you're right though. We don't have that kind of frontman. You know who has it? And I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but whose frontman has it? Mainskin. Have you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you told me to check them out.
Yeah, man. Their
I did
singer,
not.
their bass player.
Oh, yeah.
They've got like it to me.
And they're probably an outlier, man, because rock and roll isn't as scary or as dangerous as it used to be.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the opposite.
It's the complete opposite.
It is. It is.
A note to any young starting out rock bands: don't go indie.
Yeah. Indie was a cool thing at one point. Like Sonic Youth, as Aaron and I were recently discussing, were indie before indie was like the thing you wanted to be. Mm-hmm. Like before they took off, indie was great. And then indie remained good up through a lot of the 90s. It stayed kind of unique. Now, indie is just delay saturated chorus laden guitars and lame sad vocals, and that is not what indie was supposed to be in my heart. I feel, but every indie band right now, oh god, I don't want to say that,
layered guitars and buried vocals.
Yes, but when you see indie rock and you see a song listed as indie rock, there is a feel that's going to be there, and it's going to be there. And I listen to 50 plus new songs every week, and it's always like that. And I'm like, man, there's such an opportunity. Like alt used to, that fell under alternative back in the day, and alternative meant not the norm. It meant not the shit you hear in the top 40s. Alternative was supposed to be something unique and different. What Depeche Mode would have been to a Duran Duran, for example, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's not there. Like, I don't see that uniqueness. What there are right now, there are a lot of really, really good bands putting out pop punk, emo kind of stuff right now. There's a lot of that out of there. There's a lot of good classic rock revival that is really good. Bands like Rival Sons, Dirty Honey. Wow, I'm on the spot and I can't come up with more. But there are a ton of
Wolf
those.
Mother,
Wolf Mother, yeah. Black Pistol Fire and stuff that bled out from like the Black Keys and Jack White and that lo-fi era where we kind of merged back into garage rock for a while.
Yeah, that was so hot for a couple of years. It wasn't like around 2010, 2012, somewhere around there. And then it was kind of a flash in the pan, I think, with garage rock. It's very popular in the 60s and 70s, but when it came to its revival, it almost reminded me of like the swing revival. If you remember that, with like the cherry popping daddies or whatever, everyone was into swing.
My God.
And that
swing.
Yeah. That window was maybe 5 years, and I think the same can be said of garage rock as well. There's still some really good garage rock bands. I mean, shit. The Hives put out a great garage rock record after 11 years of being on a hiatus, and it fucking kicks ass.
Oh, it does.
So it's still. There's elements of it that still exist. There's some, bands that are still very garage rock. But, I think that whole movement and that whole spirit kind of came and went already.
It's such a shame too, because for me, what garage rock brought back, and Chris, I credit you for being the one who turned me really into that stuff, even frankly after it had passed. But what it brought back was authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's
Yeah.
being recorded was real. Like now, when you hear a song on the radio, it's so perfect. It's pristine. It
Sanitary.
as a result, it becomes sanitary and it loses
God.
soul.
Yep.
And that soul is just gone from music, like at least largely. When I say music, I mean popular music that the masses ingest daily.
Mm-hmm.
So if Guns N' Roses comes out with Appetite for Destruction 2 today, how does that do on the charts?
I think it goes straight to number one today.
Think so?
I think it would go fucking crazy too. I mean, like, what was it? Use Your Illusion. Is that's it, right? Am I fucking that up?
Yeah.
Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, they were released simultaneously.
But
and,
separately as two different albums.
Correct. But they trended very high on Billboard. And I think they said like within 2 to 3 hours of those records dropping, like basically like a 24 or 48 hour period, like 500,000 copies had been sold of both records. So,
People
I'd imagine that
work.
What's that?
People left work and lined up outside of Sam Goody.
Yeah.
And I mean, like when a band dropped an album, then it was an event.
Hands down. And I imagine if what Aaron was saying, if there was an Appetite for Destruction too, I think that there's a market for it. I think people are getting tired. They I guess they want something new, but they want something familiar. And I think that that's kind of what Guns N' Roses could bring to the table. And if they could, I mean, hats off to them, because we need, these rockers now, they need a kick to the fucking pants because they really need to get their shit together. A lot of it just feels very unsafe, very sanitary, very proper and like fucking perfect. And that's not what rock and roll is.
It's sloppy. It's energy. It's sweaty. It's imperfect by definition.
Well, there's a note of that song where the lyrics are, "When did punk rock become so safe?" You know?
Yeah.
And so like even in the dangerous side of rock, it's become way too safe and way too sanitary.
True.
Yeah.
So it's like we've been waiting with Guns N' Roses for so long for them to come out with that album. You know, and they've just been bullshitting around with, whatever problems they have. Could they still come out with today something similar to that spirit that they had in Appetite for Destruction and GNR Lies and some on Use Your Illusion 1 and 2?
Yes and no. I say yes and no because they're not the people they were going through the things they were at that time.
I was saying the same
every
thing.
one of them are better musicians today than they were at that point in their life. They have different experience, different tastes. I don't think what would come out would be a comparable thing to Appetite for Destruction. But what I do think is that it won't come out unless it's good, and I think that's why we haven't seen it yet. They've released, 3 or 4 new singles, all of which are like kind of leftover hangarounds from Chinese Democracy. Hard School, Absurd, Perhaps, those all kind of come back from that era. And Hard School could have been on Appetite as far as I'm concerned. It is such an ass kicker. Where Absurd feels very Chinese Democracy. It's got a much more industrial flavor to it. It's heavier. Axl's voice is distorted, and it's very angry. And so, I mean, I don't necessarily know which direction they'd go. And it's interesting because they've all taken a lot of different directions over the years. I mean, Slash went on and he had Slash's Snake Pit. He had that album he did with pop stars doing duets with every one of them. He has Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, which is arguably one of the best active rock bands right at this moment, in my opinion. And then there's ye old Velvet Revolver, who I would hate to see disappear from history because that was pretty cool. Velvet Revolver was pretty rad.
Well, I mean, it's essentially Guns N' Roses with Scott
Weiland and Guns N' Roses. It was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. and it came out, and it was pretty hard hitting, honestly. It wasn't like it. It was the closest thing to Appetite that had happened since Appetite. In a lot of ways, to me, songs like Slither, they're very riff driven, very, and I think that's what Slash brings to the table. Is Slash is the I can build a riff that people will not forget around it.
Yeah, man. And if Velvet Revolver weren't around, like, what would strip clubs play like in the South?
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How are they ever going to get past? Oh my God, Fall to Pieces. Oh man, that was a good era. Their fun fact: Velvet Revolver's first show, like MTV played a big role in kind of them coming to light, and they did a show at the Pageant, which is a venue I regularly attend here in town. Well, in St. Louis, I'm in the suburbs, but called the Pageant, and that's where their first show was done and aired live on MTV. I have a couple of buddies who had been there. I had no idea it was happening because I didn't live here at the time. But yeah, that's that show that aired live on MTV when Scott Weiland and them finally got together for the first time. Was right here. It was a pretty. It was a cool show to watch. Like I wasn't there. I watched the video though, and it was pretty great.
Nice.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they're all back together. Apparently, Steven Adler is doing some cameos here and there during the tour.
Izzy did one.
Not a permanent part of the group, but he's still alive and he can come in and he can do some guest spots. I would love to see a new album within the next couple of years. I have no idea what it would look like, but Axl doesn't have the same voice that he used to. There are.
You write the new songs for that, though.
Like, yeah, I mean, there are times where when you can hear that, like that same voice that he used to have. He's got that range sometimes, but he's never going to hit those heights that he used to.
You can tell he's put a lot of work into it. Like frankly, the social media community makes a lot of fun of him, and I think it's unfairly. He's out there. Those are not easy songs for a 20-year-old. I mean, he hit some high notes that he held forever. And it required a lot of range because, like, a song like It's So Easy, he's singing, I see your sister, and he's way low. So, I mean, Axl had a tremendous amount of range, and pretty much no one still has that range in your late 50s, early 60s. That range disappears. So, if they write new music, that new music would then be written for the voice he has now, which I think would lead to less situations where he's struggling to hit those notes.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad to see him out there making music again. I mean, they're 5 years into the reunion tour now. And we thought we'd have a new album by now. And they all say that they've been writing music together and they've been recording and they've been doing things. I don't know. Maybe there will be, maybe there won't. All I know is if the chance to go see him live again happens, I'll be there. It was really great to finally be able to put a bow on that and have seen Guns N' Roses in my life,
Yeah, even if you do have to take out a second mortgage.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same fucking thing. Oh my God. They're going to
terrible seats.
Yeah, and be willing to pay $600 fucking for them,
Oh God, yeah,
and
you're in New York City.
I hate that when we're talking music. I mean, there's almost like a purity about it, but then when money gets involved, it kind of sullies the whole fucking thing, doesn't it?
It does.
I had a chance to see, and this is a little off topic, so I won't spend too much time here, but I had a chance to see the Misfits perform in Madison Square Garden with the Damned and Rancid opening for them. I believe it was Halloween night, but I was not prepared to spend $500 to sit in the pit.
Yeah.
I could not fucking bring myself to do it. Now I'm kind of kicking myself in the ass for not doing it, to be honest.
Well, you know what I'll say is that I had an opportunity. I was working for a magazine that Chris and I used to work on. And we were out, me and a friend of ours who ran the sales team were doing a cover shoot with a celebrity in that industry, if that makes sense, in Orange County. And the day of that cover shoot, we found out Slash was playing the whiskey that night. It was for his band Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators was releasing a new album, and it was the album release party show. And we thought, boy, that would be cool. And we just gotten paid from a good issue that we'd just gotten out, and we were sitting a little fat at the moment, and we bought $600 each tickets to see Slash inside the Whiskey A Go Go.
How was
But it was
that?
like, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime thing. It's Slash. It's Mr. Whiskey A Go Go in the Whiskey A Go Go. So we're never going to see Slash from 12 feet away in our lives. You know, we can't afford the tickets that put you that close, if they even exist at a major auditorium. For the
God,
most
and I
part,
love those
it's
intimate shows, man. They're so
Yeah,
much
and
better
it-
than these big arena shows.
They did probably 5 Guns N' Roses tunes that night. They
Sick.
did Rocket Queen, Paradise City, Welcome to the Jungle, a lot of the early stuff.
Nice.
And it was so great. It was so great. You know, I mean, it was a Slash from 10 feet away. I shot a ton of videos. We drank with strangers.
Sick.
We then
As-
went
as
from
often
there to the
happens.
Rainbow, where I got tossed out. Well, I didn't get tossed out. We kind of got like shadow tossed, if that makes sense. We got to the Rainbow, and I was really, really, really inebriated, and I behaved somewhat poorly, and didn't want to wait for a table, so I just walked in and sat down at a booth like I owned the place for some reason, like I had some undeserved sense of self-worth. And for an hour, nobody would come by and take our order. And finally, Jacob convinced me to go out, and we went out, and I stood in the middle of the Sunset Strip and screamed that I was the Lizard King and I could do anything, just like Jim Morrison.
That's what you do. That's what
And,
you got to do on Sunset Strip. Come on.
Yeah,
The fuck
every
were you
time
drinking,
I've gone,
gasoline?
I have not made a trip to Sunset that kind of didn't involve a little bit of shame when it was over. Like,
How it should
but
be.
what I will say is that is every couple of years, that is my pilgrimage. We go out, we get tickets to every bar on the street. We'll get tickets at least the Viper Room, the Whiskey, the Roxy, and end the night at the Rainbow, just like Rockstars did as far back as, before the Beatles.
Right.
And it is a trip that is well worth it for anyone who enjoys rock and roll music. I mean, every generation, the Doors were the house band at the Whiskey. No matter which generation you like, somebody you love passed through that little chunk of road down there and probably got tattooed and hammered at the Rainbow before it was over.
There you go.
Well, guys, this has been it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun talking about Guns N' Roses, remembering the good old days. I look forward to seeing what comes next for those guys. Of the songs they released, the 3 new ones, I really like 2 out of 3, and Absurd is the only one I'm not like 100% on board with, but it's solid. So I hope we'll see something new come out of there. Guys, Chris, Aaron, thank you so much for being on here with us tonight. This is always a blast.
Not a problem, man. This has been great.
It's the highlight of my weekend. And
Nice.
That's about it from us. Please take a minute to like, share, subscribe. If you see us on social or anywhere else, please say hello. We love these chats. We'd love to hear what you think. We'd love to hear your opinions, what you think would have happened to Guns N' Roses if they didn't break up, and maybe where they're headed now. So everybody have a great week. We'll see you back next time. Make sure you check us out on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else you get podcasts, video, and social media. But we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, guys.